Welcome to Hero Biography, where legends and extraordinary individuals are brought to life through inspiring stories that help you learn, grow, and level up every day. Subscribe now so you don't miss out. The wind sweeps endlessly across the Mongolian steppe, carrying with it echoes of conquest, power, and fear, echoes tied to one name that once shook the world: Tonkat Tuhan. This was a man who didn't just win battles. He rewrote the rules of power itself. Rising from exile and hardship, he built an empire so vast it stretched across continents, connecting east and west in ways no one had imagined before. Cities fell at the mere rumor of his approach. Armies collapsed before they even saw him. To some, he was a visionary. To others, a force of pure destruction. But to everyone, he was unstoppable. And that's what makes this story so unsettling. Because a man like that doesn't just disappear. At the height of his power, in the middle of a successful campaign, Genghis Khan died. No grand announcement, no clear cause, no final words recorded in history. Instead, what followed was silence, deliberate, controlled, almost unnatural silence. His death was hidden, the details were buried, and over time, the truth itself seemed to vanish. So here's the question that has haunted historians, leaders, and curious minds for over 800 years. What really happened to Genghis Khan? Was it an accident? A betrayal? Something far darker? Or was the truth so dangerous it had to be erased entirely? To understand why the death of Tonkat Tuhan feels so unnatural, almost impossible, you have to go back to the beginning, long before he became a name that echoed across continents. He wasn't born into power. He wasn't handed a throne. In fact, his early life looked like the exact opposite of destiny. Born as Temujin on the harsh Mongolian steppe, he entered a world defined by survival, betrayal, and constant conflict. When he was still a boy, his father was poisoned by a rival tribe, leaving his family abandoned and vulnerable. Stripped of protection, they were cast out, forced to live off the land, scavenging for food, enduring hunger that would break most people. This wasn't the origin story of a king. It was the origin story of someone who should have disappeared. But he didn't. What followed was a relentless climb, one built not just on strength, but on strategy, loyalty, and an almost terrifying understanding of human nature. Temujin didn't just fight enemies. He redefined how alliances worked. He broke traditional tribal loyalties and rebuilt them based on merit and trust. He rewarded competence over bloodline. He absorbed rivals, turned enemies into allies, and slowly unified the fractured Mongol tribes under one banner. That banner would soon belong to Genghis Khan. And once he rose, everything changed. His armies moved faster than anything the world had seen. They were disciplined, adaptable, and ruthlessly efficient. He didn't just conquer land. He dismantled entire systems of resistance. Cities that resisted were destroyed. Those that surrendered were often spared, but always absorbed into a growing machine of expansion. From northern China to Central Asia, from the edges of the Islamic world to Eastern Europe, his influence spread like wildfire. But what made him truly unstoppable wasn't just military power. It was psychological dominance. Before his army even arrived, fear had already done half the work. Stories of his brutality traveled faster than his soldiers. Entire cities surrendered without a fight, hoping to avoid destruction. His name became a weapon. His reputation became strategy. He understood something modern leaders still study today: perception can be more powerful than force. And yet, behind that image of destruction was also a system builder. He established trade routes, protected merchants, encouraged communication across vast distances, and laid the groundwork for what would later become one of the most significant periods of cultural exchange in history. The empire he built wasn't just large, it was connected, which is why his death wasn't just the death of a man. It was the potential collapse of a system. Think about it in modern terms. Imagine a founder who built a global empire from nothing. No safety net, no inheritance, just vision, resilience, and relentless execution. Now imagine that person disappears overnight, with no explanation, no succession clarity, and no transparency. Markets would panic. Leadership would fracture. Rivals would circle. The entire structure would be at risk. That's the scale we're talking about. Genghis Khan wasn't just a ruler. He was the center of gravity holding everything together. His presence ensured unity. His reputation ensured obedience. His leadership ensured momentum. Remove that, and suddenly the empire isn't invincible anymore. It's vulnerable. And that's exactly why his death matters so much. Because it wasn't just a personal event. It was a geopolitical shockwave waiting to happen. If his enemies discovered he was gone, they could rise up. If rival factions within the empire sensed weakness, they could break apart. If the illusion of invincibility shattered, everything he built could start to unravel. So when you look at the mystery surrounding his death, you have to ask yourself a different kind of question. Not just, how did he die? But, who needed the world to believe he hadn't? Because for a man who built his legacy on dominance, control, and perception, even death had to be managed. Even death had to serve a purpose. And when you start to see it that way, the silence surrounding his final moments doesn't feel like an accident anymore. It feels like strategy. By the year 1227, Tonkat Tuhan was deep into what would become one of his final campaigns, a brutal and calculated assault against the Western Xia dynasty. Even in his 60s, an age when most leaders in that era had long stepped away from the battlefield, he was still leading from the front, still pushing his forces across unforgiving terrain with the same intensity that had defined his entire life. This wasn't a fading ruler clinging to past glory. This was a man who still looked, to both allies and enemies, completely unstoppable. The campaign itself followed a familiar pattern: strategic pressure, relentless movement, psychological dominance. Cities fell, resistance weakened, and victory seemed inevitable. If you had been alive at that moment, watching events unfold in real time, there would have been no reason to think anything unusual was about to happen. No warning signs. No dramatic shift in momentum. And then, suddenly, everything changes. Not with a massive defeat. Not with a legendary last stand. But with something far more unsettling: silence. The historical record, so detailed when it comes to his victories, becomes strangely fragmented when it approaches his final days. Accounts contradict each other. Timelines blur. Key details are either missing or suspiciously vague. It's as if the narrative itself breaks down at the exact moment clarity matters most. For a figure as significant as Genghis Khan, that kind of silence isn't just unusual. It's suspicious. So historians, researchers, and storytellers have spent centuries trying to fill in the gaps. What they've come up with are several competing theories, each one plausible on the surface, but none of them fully convincing. The first and most straightforward explanation is that he died in battle. Given his lifestyle, it would make sense. He spent decades at war, constantly exposed to danger. A fatal wound, perhaps one that worsened over time, could have finally taken him down. But here's the problem. There's no clear record of a decisive battle during that campaign that would explain such an outcome. No dramatic clash. No detailed account of injury. And for a man whose victories were meticulously recorded, the absence of specifics around his death feels off. Then there's the second theory, one that sounds almost mundane compared to the scale of his life. Some sources suggest he died after falling from his horse. On paper, it's plausible. Even the most skilled riders can be injured, especially during long campaigns across harsh terrain. But this is where context matters. Genghis Khan wasn't just any rider, he was raised on horseback. His entire military strategy depended on mobility, endurance, and control in the saddle. The idea that a simple fall would end the life of someone with that level of mastery feels underwhelming, almost too ordinary for someone so extraordinary. Which leads to a darker possibility: assassination. This is where the story begins to take on a different tone. Some legends claim that a captured noblewoman, often described as a Western Xia princess, killed him in an act of revenge. Other versions suggest internal betrayal, possibly from someone within his own circle who saw an opportunity in his death. While there's no hard evidence to confirm these claims, the lack of transparency surrounding his final moments gives these theories just enough space to exist. After all, if something politically sensitive had happened, something that could destabilize the empire, it would make sense to hide it. And then there's the fourth theory, illness. From a modern perspective, this might be the most realistic explanation. Campaign life was brutal. Exposure, exhaustion, infection, any of these could have led to a fatal condition, especially given the medical limitations of the time. Some accounts suggest fever. Others hint at disease. It's entirely possible that Genghis Khan, despite all his power, succumbed to something invisible rather than something dramatic. But here's where the question becomes unavoidable. If it was illness, why the secrecy? Why not document it clearly the way other historical figures were recorded? Why not frame it as the natural end of a powerful life? Illness wouldn't diminish his legacy. If anything, it would humanize him. Unless that wasn't the goal. Because when you step back and look at all these theories together, a pattern starts to emerge. It's not just that we don't know how he died. It's that every possible explanation feels incomplete, like pieces of a puzzle that don't quite fit. And that brings us back to the silence. Not the kind of silence that comes from lost records or poor documentation, but the kind that feels intentional, controlled, maintained. For a man whose life was defined by precision, strategy, and control over narrative, it's hard to believe that his death would be left to chance. Hard to believe that something so critical would simply go undocumented without reason. So maybe the real story isn't any single theory. Maybe it's the fact that none of them can be confirmed. Because sometimes, the absence of an answer isn't a failure of history. Sometimes, it's the result of something being deliberately hidden. What happens after the death of Tonkat Tuhan is where the story stops feeling like history and starts feeling like something deliberately engineered. Because instead of clarity, what follows is control. Not just over information, but over reality itself. According to multiple historical accounts, his death was not announced immediately. There was no public mourning, no official declaration sent across the empire. Instead, operations continued as if nothing had changed. Campaigns moved forward. Orders were issued. The illusion of leadership remained intact. For an empire built on momentum and fear, this wasn't just a decision, it was a necessity. Any sign of weakness could trigger rebellion, hesitation, or fragmentation. So the first step wasn't to honor his death. It was to hide it. And that's where the cover-up begins. His body, it said, was transported in absolute secrecy across vast stretches of land. The escort was not ceremonial. It was controlled, silent, and ruthless. Legends describe a funeral procession where anyone who crossed paths with it was killed to protect the secret. Whether exaggerated or not, the consistency of this detail across sources suggests something important. This was not a normal burial. This was an operation designed to erase evidence. When the procession reached its destination, the secrecy only intensified. The burial site was prepared in isolation. Those who participated in constructing the tomb were reportedly executed afterward. Then the soldiers who carried out those executions were also eliminated. Layer by layer, every witness was removed from the chain of knowledge. Finally, the ground itself was altered. Horses driven over the site to destroy any sign that something had ever been buried there. No markers. No coordinates. No trace. Just absence. So the question shifts again. Not how he died, but why everything about his death had to disappear. One explanation is control. Genghis Khan's empire wasn't just held together by military strength, it was held together by perception. He wasn't just a leader, he was a symbol of inevitability. As long as that symbol remained intact, the empire functioned with near-perfect efficiency. But if that illusion cracked, if enemies or even internal factions realized that he was gone, the entire system could destabilize. Information, in that context, wasn't neutral. It was strategic. And controlling it meant controlling the future. But there's another possibility that's harder to ignore. What if the secrecy wasn't just about protecting the empire? What if it was about protecting someone within it? Because in any system built on power, succession is the most dangerous moment. When a dominant leader disappears, the question of who's next doesn't just create uncertainty, it creates opportunity. And opportunity, in the wrong hands, can look a lot like betrayal. If Genghis Khan's death involved internal conflict, if there were disagreements, power struggles, or even deliberate actions that led to his end, then hiding the truth wouldn't just be strategic. It would be necessary, not to preserve the empire's image, but to protect those who inherited it. And then there's the tomb, or rather, the absence of one. Despite centuries of searching, despite modern satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and international expeditions, no confirmed burial site of Genghis Khan has ever been found. Think about that for a second. We've located ancient cities buried under deserts. We've mapped ruins deep in jungles. We've reconstructed entire civilizations from fragments. And yet, the final resting place of one of the most powerful figures in human history remains completely unknown. Some believe it lies in a remote, protected region of Mongolia, possibly within the Kentai Mountains. Others suggest more extreme theories, that a river was diverted to cover the grave, or that the burial site was intentionally placed in a location designed to erase itself over time. There are even those who believe it has already been found, but intentionally kept secret to respect cultural traditions or avoid disturbing something meant to remain untouched. And where history leaves gaps, legend steps in. Stories have grown around his burial, stories of curses, of sacred land, of consequences for those who try to uncover what was hidden. Some say that disturbing his tomb would bring misfortune. Others claim that it's still guarded, not by soldiers, but by the very isolation and terrain that once protected it. Whether you believe in those legends or not, they serve a purpose. They reinforce the idea that this is a mystery not meant to be solved easily. But maybe the most interesting possibility is this. What if the mystery itself was intentional? What if the disappearance of Genghis Khan, no confirmed cause of death, no known grave, no definitive narrative, wasn't a failure of record-keeping, but a final act of control? Because a man with a clear ending becomes history. But a man without one becomes something else entirely. He becomes a legend. And legends don't die. 8 centuries later, the question still lingers. What really happened to Tonkat Tuhan? Not the simplified versions written in textbooks, not the scattered theories passed down over time, but the truth, the one that was buried, protected, and possibly erased on purpose. Was it something ordinary, like illness or injury, turned into a secret for the sake of stability? Or was it something far more dangerous, something that, if revealed, could have fractured the empire he built? What makes this mystery so powerful isn't just the lack of answers. It's the intention behind that silence. Every missing detail, every contradiction, every unexplained decision points to one possibility. This wasn't an accident of history. It was control. It was strategy. And maybe, just maybe, it was the final move of a man who understood power better than anyone else. Because in a world where information shapes reality, the ability to control the narrative, even in death, is the ultimate form of influence. And that leaves us here, today, still searching, still questioning, still trying to separate fact from design. So now I'll leave you with the same question that has outlived empires. If the truth was hidden this carefully, what was it really hiding? If you're drawn to stories like this, where history meets mystery, and the deeper you look, the more questions you find, make sure you subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more beneath the surface of the past, and we're just getting started.